even though it seems very forward-thinking and out of the box, we are starting with ketamine-assisted therapy, which is legal. It's on the World Health Organization's list of essential medicines, so it's been around for 60 years, so it's very safe. We are seeing that even some of the conservative employers are showing interest in this because ultimately, not only will they be healing their employees, they'll be more productive, they'll stay at their job longer, and it'll save them on their cost of medical spend.
Hello and welcome to the Mind Your Leadership podcast. I'm Karen Suk, and today I'm delighted to introduce you to Sherry Reyes. Sherry is a visionary leader and the CEO and co-founder of Anthea, a company dedicated to crafting benefit plans for forward-thinking and compassionate employers. Going beyond the conventional corporate narrative, Sherry is on a mission with a higher purpose. Currently, your focus is on making psychedelic-assisted therapy more accessible to alleviate human suffering. Sherry wears multiple hats, not just as Anita's CEO, but also the executive director of the Boston Psychedelic Research Group, HR consultant for Sensorium Therapeutics, and strategic advisor for CIIS. In our conversation, we'll delve into Sherry's journey, exploring her passion for integrating psychedelic therapy into the workplace. Join us for an uplifting discussion on the transformative potential that lies at the intersection of leadership and psychedelic therapy with the inspiring Sherry Reyes. So, Sherry, thank you for joining.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I would love to start by asking you how and why, what was your motivation in creating your company? And I think I didn't pronounce it right, so please recap the name.
No, you pronounced it fine. It's Anthea. And my motivation stems from sort of a broader motivation to try and use the time I have on this earth to reduce human suffering. That has always been my North Star, or my compass, you could say. And so prior to getting involved in the psychedelic space, I spent 10 years on poverty reduction. And those 10 years, I was fully abroad and in the field. So I ended up helping design and implement poverty reduction programs in 37 different countries, usually at the national level, getting to work with presidents and prime ministers and heads of state, and really working in very resource constrained environments like Afghanistan, Yemen, Malawi, Niger. Yeah, it opened my eyes to a lot, and I got to see firsthand the effects of intergenerational poverty and trauma and conflict on community. I also got to see that you can't fully address poverty without addressing mental health. And I also got to see, we hear from statistics from World Health Organization, from the UN, this global mental health crisis that, globally, over 1 billion people are suffering from a severe mental health condition. It's in lifetime prevalence, 1 in 2 people will suffer from something in their lifetime. In low-income countries, it's actually like 70, depression rates are closer to like 70% sometimes post-war, post-conflict. And so I would hear statistics, but I was seeing firsthand what that looked like in community. And I was desperate to find solutions and answers. And I was really surprised, and sorry, Dr. Karen, this is a little bit of a long answer, but really surprised to see that most of the things we are using to treat mental health are not very effective. And we don't talk about that enough. We definitely are talking more in North America and in Europe about the mental health crisis, that people are, especially since COVID, more depressed, more anxious. There's more rates of suicide. But we're not talking about the fact that actually our talk therapy and our antidepressants, while they can relieve symptoms, while they can help some people, most of the people that take them don't find relief and definitely don't find a cure. If at best what they find is a reduction in symptoms, which is good, but not a cure. And so what inspired me to start this company was I stumbled upon all of this amazing research in the psychedelic space and was really blown away to initially read that in clinical trials, unlike our traditional approaches to mental health, 65 to 80% of people who participate in clinical trials for psychedelic assisted therapy were coming out at 1 year follow up cured. This means they did 1 to 4 or 1 to 6 psychedelic therapy sessions, probably over a 3 to 4 month period, and that was it. They don't keep taking psychedelics, they're not taking any more pills, they don't do ongoing therapy. And at 1 year follow up, most of them would no longer present the symptoms for their that condition, whether it's depression or PTSD or anxiety. This is very unheard of in anything else that we have to treat mental health. And yeah, that's really what inspired me to start the company. It was, how do we get more people access to this?
Amazing. So you're saying actually that people who went through this therapy, they actually cured
Yeah.
their not the symptoms, but the cause of the
Exactly.
symptoms. So it didn't came back. It didn't come back. So this is an amazing data that you showed. That it's not. It's really essential, right? If we try
Yes.
to cure people.
So, what's so interesting about psychedelic substances is that while SSRIs or antidepressants work to increase serotonin levels in our brain, serotonin is responsible for happiness, right, in the brain, that good positive feeling. Psychedelics activate serotonin receptors. Traditional psychedelics activate receptors. So they're not just increasing their serotonin, they're actually activating the serotonin receptors, allowing your brain to naturally create more serotonin even when you stop taking the psychedelics. And ketamine blocks NMDA receptors in the brain, which is receptors that are involved with memory and ruminating, things like this.
This was actually the question that I wanted to ask you, if you can explain the concept of psychedelic therapy and the potential benefits for leaders. So you're actually on it.
Oh, great. So essentially, what this means, this different kind of mechanism of action for psychedelics, is that it allows the default mode network in our brain to decrease activity. Now, what does that mean? The default mode network in our brain is this area of our brain that's active in everyone, very active in leaders. It's active when we are reflecting, ruminating, maybe going for a walk and thinking about things. Our brain is, in action. That part of our brain is very good. But when you have severe depression or anxiety or trauma or even addiction issues, this part of the brain is overactive. You can sort of think about, if you have a lot of anxiety, you might always be thinking what other people are thinking of you, or always being focused on some sort of negative aspect or negative thing that happened. If you have trauma, you're stuck in this thinking about the trauma. So when you take a psychedelic substance, this part of the brain, the activity is reduced, and it allows us to form new connections in the brain. And the neuroplasticity in the brain, the ability to form new connections, is heightened quite significantly. And when you do it in conjunction with a therapist, you are able to really create new ways of thinking and new ways of processing things. And you can get to that root cause of your trauma, of your addiction, of your depression, of your anxiety. And this is why we're seeing with this treatment, unlike anything else, people are really finding a way to get cured.
Yes. So first of all, you explained already the difference between there's different kinds of psychedelics, right? Can you recall the distinguish between ketamine and other psychedelic substance? Because there are various kinds of. I understand that you work with the ketamine.
Yes.
Do you know to
So
distinguish between them, or it's not something that you?
no, I can explain the difference at a high level. There are many psychedelic compounds, and all work a little bit differently in the brain and have some differences. And there's probably more psychedelic substances we don't know about. Traditional psychedelics refer to psilocybin, commonly known as magic mushroom, MDMA, which is also commonly known as ecstasy, and LSD, which is in the street world known as acid. These are kind of traditional psychedelics, and these ones work on the 5 5-HT2A receptors. My cat is now in the podcast as well.
I love it.
But her name is Truffle, kind of like the mushroom, so it's appropriate. But these traditional psychedelics work on the 5-HT2A serotonin receptors in the brain. Ketamine works on the NMDA receptor in the brain, so it's a different receptor. And then there are other psychedelics, more DMT based things like mescaline and ayahuasca, peyote, come from more cactus like plants, for example.
Mhm.
The thing they have in common is they all increase neuroplasticity. They, in trials, are all shown to be roughly 4 times more effective than antidepressants. They all allow you to get to sort of like the root cause of what was bothering you because you are in this altered state. So they all produce a altered state of consciousness. So these are the things that they have in common. And then there are a few more differences, like, for example, a ketamine therapy session would be the duration would be 60 to 90 minutes. But if you're doing a psilocybin or an MDMA assisted therapy session, this might be like 6 to 8 hours. So there's a big difference in the duration of the
Mhm.
effect.
Interesting. Let me ask you, can individuals access similar states of consciousness without the use of psychedelics? What do you think about tapping into our own wisdom, going through this process and tapping into the space? What do you think about it?
Definitely. I don't want to be misquoted or saying the wrong thing. I know that we can reach these altered states of consciousness through meditation, through breath work, like holotropic breath work was actually created by Stan Grof when psychedelics became scheduled substances and we didn't have access to psychedelics in the US. Holotropic breath work is born out of this, like another way to get to an altered state. But breath work, meditation, for some people maybe prayer, for some people maybe perhaps a lot of laughter. I don't think I've seen that study yet, but I could imagine, with a lot of extreme laughter, maybe you're in an altered state. So there are different ways to get there. It's really just what can we tap into easily, directly, and reliably. For some people, breath work and meditation may seem different or not different, difficult, or may not work. Like, I know some people who have been meditating for over a decade and they haven't achieved that sort of altered state, right? But for some people, they get to an altered state within 1 month of meditating. So it really depends, and this is perhaps another option, or an option for people who are really struggling with depression or anxiety or PTSD and need to get to that state quicker.
Mhm. So actually, you say that people can get to this state of consciousness by meditating, and there's various kinds of people. Some it works for them, for others it doesn't work. But once they use the psychedelic therapy, it actually cure them in such a profound way, and they are altered. Their brain is altered, and they change it if they're went through a trauma. So it's healed. So they kind of getting from this therapy like kind of new human beings, right? Because they don't take it with them as we usually do. Take our trauma. There's
Yeah,
the book called "The Body
body
Keeps the
keeps the
Score."
score. Yeah.
So the body keeps all our traumas. So actually, this like what I hear from it's kind of a magic that you go through this process and poof, it's not there anymore. It doesn't manage you anymore. That sounds amazing.
Um,
No.
yes, and to be clear, it is still a process. So maybe clarify the process of what this therapy looks like. It's
Mhm.
definitely not you go to a clinic, you do a session, you leave, and you're a changed person overnight. It can happen. People have transformative experiences for sure. Most people, I forget the percentage. I know it's over 50%. I don't know if it's 60 or 70 of people that did a psychedelic experience rated their top 3 life experiences. So
Mhm.
up there with like getting married and having kids. So it's definitely transformative, even just one time. But in terms of what the process looks like, in a clinical setting, it starts with preparation. Actually, it starts with an assessment to make sure you're a good fit. So you would first do a medical and a psychiatric evaluation to make sure that you are a good fit. Depending on the psychedelic that you're taking, if some are not appropriate, if maybe you're breastfeeding or if you have high blood pressure, so you have to make sure you're a good fit, then you would do preparation. So you would spend a few times talking to your therapist before doing any psychedelic, maybe 1 to 3 times, really getting to the intention of why you're here. Why are you doing this? What's the context? What's been bothering you? So those preparation sessions are important so that you're not going into an altered state with no goal or no intention. And then you'll do, maybe depending on the compound, with ketamine it would be 1 to 6 sessions on average. With psilocybin and MDMA, maybe 1 to 3 sessions, potentially 4, where you're taking this substance and you have someone there with you to guide you as you are in this altered state of consciousness. So you're not just there, sitting in a forest alone. It's not that kind of experience. It's
Yeah.
clinical with protocols, and there's somebody there with you. And when you're doing that, I should say that the process is difficult. It's not fun. It's important for people not to think, oh, like this is like a great recreational, this is that same drug I did in a party when I was younger in my 20s. Maybe it was fun in your 20s in a party, but this is a very different experience where you're, for many hours, you're going through the root cause of your trauma. Of course, afterwards, the result is great, but the process is a lot of work, which is
Mhm.
why I think also psychedelics are not known to be addictive, or they're not habit forming, because it's very difficult process to go through. It's not something you want to do every weekend. And
But
then
again, I think you're in a different state of mind when you're going through this psychedelic substance. No, it's not this.
you
You don't experience it the same as you experience with sitting to
correct.
talk with your therapist. No,
Correct.
correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you are definitely in a different state of mind, but you're still going through, it's still a process. It's still work. Um,
Mhm.
but yes, you are in a different state of mind. And for example, traditional psychedelics, or MDMA specifically, is like very much a heart warmer. So you'll have an increase in serotonin, and you'll be able to revisit trauma in a way where it doesn't feel too difficult on the body, right?
Mhm.
And then after those medicine sessions, you'll still have to do what we call integration. So you have to do a few sessions with your therapist afterwards to make sure that everything that you process and you went through in your mind during that altered state, you can now bring to your everyday life.
Yes, to implement it into day to day because you're in different state. Before we joined to this conversation, I had a talk with a colleague and she asked me, can you please ask her if the perspective shift induced by psychedelic results is fundamental transformation of one's identity? Like I can take this drugs or psychedelics and get out of this session a different person with a different identity? Like,
That's such an interesting question. You are not a different person. You are you. If anything, you are the core you. You're more connected to your source, to the you that's inside all of these layers.
to it
Um,
yourself, right?
to yourself, yeah. So you don't completely change identities. It's not like, I walked in and I used to love pizza and I come out and I hate pizza. Like, it's not going to be like this kind of change. But um, we do see people, if you remove all of those layers, people often say that one session is like 10 years of therapy, right?
Mhm.
So you're getting more connected to yourself. But if you think about 10 years of therapy, if you think about removing all these layers of trauma, or feeling more connected to love, and feeling more gratitude towards others, you may come out sometimes wanting to make some very big decisions. And usually people are advised, like, no, don't make decisions, in the next few days that follow. Because people come out and they say, no, I want to quit my job. No, I want to move cities. No, I want to study a new thing. So this can happen that you have these like very big decisions that you want to make. I want to sell my house, things like this. But usually it's advised, don't make those decisions in the first few days. But you know what? Maybe if you're still feeling that way after you've done the integration, it's been a month, you've done your integration, and you truly feel like this career I'm in is not for me, that's probably you're more yourself.
Mhm. So actually, the psychedelic therapy helps you to connect better to your true self and to overcome the trauma experience in order to to live your life fully and to be in the right place, in the right work. And I want to take it to the workplace because actually your company brings it to leaders, to employers, to bring it to their employees. How do leaders react to this new offering? Because let's be honest, it's a new offering in the workplace and in the world as well. So I'll be happy to hear your experience and thought about it.
Thank you for that question. There's two areas of this that I think are important to cover, especially since I know your podcast is geared towards leaders and leadership. So there is one group of people, they're not mutually exclusive, in leadership positions, in C-suite positions, that are especially interested in these medicines for perhaps their own productivity, creativity, and optimization. So as a leader, I might be interested in how do I perform better? How do I optimize my brain functioning? How do I be more content with my life so I can be a better boss? All of these types of things are very of interest to leaders, and we are seeing even this week. I'm traveling to Silicon Valley on the weekend and doing a workshop with tech companies in Silicon Valley because this is a really important topic to leaders, and you see people like Elon Musk talking about his use of ketamine therapy. And there were some great, actually, trials with the use of like LSD in Silicon Valley back in the 60s and 70s, and some important discoveries that have happened. Like I think the sequence of DNA happened as a result of psychedelic substance use. So there's this idea for leaders that this can make me more creative, that can help me solve problems, right? And this is very interesting. And you see some leaders actually going on retreats outside of the US where there is full legal access to psychedelic substances, like in Jamaica or Costa Rica. So this is one movement that's happening. But what my company is trying to do is how do we make these medicines accessible to the entire employee population, not just for the leaders, not just for the C-suites, not just for the founders, but how do we make it accessible to everyone that can benefit? And this is also attractive to leaders and CEOs and HR people because right now, all over the world, but I'll talk about America, we're really struggling with mental health in the workplace. Like the burnout and stress is the number one reason people quit their job. 2/3 of employees say they're not happy with their current mental health care. Half of people that go on antidepressants come off of their antidepressants within 2 months. In the US, it's costing, the treatment of mental health is costing over $200 billion. In the world, it's $1 trillion that we spend on treating mental health.
Mhm.
In the US, this is employers, mostly employers that are paying for that cost because of how the healthcare system works. So they're literally paying for their employees' poor mental health. And then there's even more costs when it comes to retention, productivity, absenteeism, something called presenteeism, like how present are you when you're working? Um, so that's kind of what we're trying to do with Anthea, is kind of tackle this problem. And even though it seems very forward thinking and out of the box, we are starting with ketamine assisted therapy, which is legal in all 50 states. It's on the World Health Organization's list of essential medicine. So it's been around for 60 years. So it's very safe. And we are seeing that even some of the conservative employers are showing interest in this because, ultimately, not only will they be healing their employees, they'll be more productive, they'll stay at their job longer, and it'll save them on their cost of medical spend.
So it's interesting. You say leaders use it for two things, or to decrease the stress, the burnout, and in order to maintain their employees and retention. And the other aspect is to increase their creativity, right? And
Yes.
innovation. So I'm interested in now going to this path. Like you said, you're going to Silicon Valley to work with the management team with these tools. What are you doing with them, with the ketamine? Are you going all the group to a therapy session, taking the ketamine and take going into, no, it's really interesting for me. I'm also working with leaders, and it's a really
No, so the workshop I'll be doing will be talking to Silicon Valley companies about how this can improve the other thing,
Mm.
productivity, retention, reduce medical spend. So it'll be less about the creativity and more about impact in the workplace, basically, because that's what my company is focused on. But I
Mhm.
think for your listeners, there are lots of studies they can find online as well, just about, inventions and discoveries that have been shaped by psychedelics. I think a great book I would recommend would be Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley. He's actually the person that coined the term psychedelic.
Because it's interesting, when I work with leaders and managers, actually I help them to increase their presence, their consciousness, and create this space for really a new wisdom to emerge, right, beyond each and every one.
Yeah.
So by creating this space, we're tapping into this place of wisdom, of creativity and innovation. And actually, although your company takes it to the depression and burnout to prevent this state of mind, once we are more present, calmer, and focused, we can go from the survival mode to the creation mode, right? And it
Hmm.
can help. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think that's also like a huge area to tap into, especially for leaders. Like I said, if you really look into like this PCR test that we all use during COVID, I
Mhm.
could be wrong, but I'm 99% sure that this type of testing was actually PCR testing was invented while he was on LSD.
Mhm.
So I think there's this huge area that is very interesting about improving creativity, increasing optimization, neurodivergence, and kind of like increasing neuroplasticity in the brain. I also think, given the work that I am in and the field that I'm focused on about treating people with severe mental health conditions, I have a bias that is the first priority or the primary goal. Like, yes, there are people who definitely want to optimize and become more creative and solve problems. And we need that in the world because we have a lot of problems in the world right now.
Yeah.
But there are people who are really suffering. There's like, I think, one suicide every 40 seconds in the world. And ketamine is actually the only substance, even more than MDMA or psilocybin, that's known to reduce suicidal ideation in as little as 4 to 6 hours. So personally, I'm all for the creativity, and yet I think we owe it to people who are suffering to get them a solution.
Yes, I can couldn't agree with you more. So I want to take it to the next question. Ask you, how do you integrate the compassion and empathy into your approach of leadership? Because it connects to the elevating suffering, right?
Ah, such a good question. So one, I think I really try in my work to, perhaps it's not a good thing, but I'm very not good at traditional selling, um, which again, perhaps not a good thing, but I think I hire people that have this sort of same ethos. Of course, I need to hire people that are good at selling, but the premise of what we're doing and the premise of what I do is to connect with others and to help people heal. Yesterday, I was in a conference in Cleveland and I gave a talk on psychedelics, and the audience was all HR people. So, people that are making decisions about benefits at their companies. And to me, what brought me joy was not the idea of networking or selling, but was after my talk, four people came up to me and told me their personal stories of either themselves or someone in their family struggling with mental health, and they like were crying with me. And so, not that I'm happy that people are crying, but I think
You
you know
touch them.
yeah, every day remembering that the reason why I'm doing this is it's not about the P&Ls and the ROIs and all of these like financial terms. It's about how many people can we help. And another example of that is even in my projections, like company projections, the entire model is based not on number of customers, but on number of covered lives. And even
Mm.
how the metrics I use with my team, it's always like, how many covered lives do we have? Because it's really about like, how many people can we help? So that's one side of it. And then I think the other side is internally, like with the amazing people that I have the pleasure and honor of working with. I hope I'm human and I make mistakes, but I hope they feel that I treat them with love and kindness and patience and grace. And so there's a lot of that. I definitely try to lead with humility.
Wow, you really touched me. So you first of all leading by example. You walk the talk, right? You bring it to the world, but it's what you amplifying in the day to day, and this is how you act. So you resonated with your own employees and within your company. So this is amazing. And what I liked also to hear that you're really passionate about the why. So the why is your star, that you go after it to heal people, to
Yeah.
alleviate the suffering. So this is your strong motivation. And the rest is part of
Yes,
the process in order to heal people, because we need a business model, we need people, we need employees, we need customers, but you're really connected to your mission to heal the world and to bring compassion and love. And I really love hearing it. And I think that love heals the world and heals human being, right? And this is what we most need right now. So
definitely.
you find the ways to bring it more and more to the corporate world, to the places that people are really suffering and feeling burnout and disconnecting from themselves. Because really, most of the day now we are in the workplace, right? It's not that we are at home anymore. Most of the time we are there. So you're coming to the places, to this ground, in order to help people and the employers to heal themselves and really through this playground make a better version of themselves, alleviate suffering, and then bring their added values and be creative and create great products and services that serve the humanity. So, it's like a stone that you drop to the water and creates ripples. So it sounds like you really talk the walk and lead it by example. So thank you for this. It's really inspiring.
Thank you, Dr. Karen.
Sherry, before we need to wrap up, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want to share with the listeners?
Yeah, maybe a couple things. One, if this is all very new to you, of course, I shared so much different information. I highly recommend How to Change Your Mind. It's a book by Michael Pollan. It's also on Netflix as a documentary. If people don't like reading, it's very easy to watch on Netflix. It's 4 episodes. So that's a great introduction to this space. Also, if people want to learn more about me or Anthea, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can email me, sherry@anthea.com. You can find more on our website. And I think lastly, really just, if you're a leader, not a leader, doesn't really matter, whoever is listening, to take a moment to check in with yourself and, just reflect on how you're doing. And if you're doing okay, if you're in a position where you're feeling okay, then maybe check in with someone and ask them how they're really doing. Because I think we're not doing enough of that in the world. So
Wow. Like getting out of yourself and connecting with others and really seeing people and only seeing them, it's create this space and love and even cure, right? And healing. Only by giving people that feeling that they're seeing. And this is also something that we are missing a lot in the workplace, right? People don't feel seen. So you say
yeah,
start with the baby steps. Even
yes,
before you take the psychedelics, see around you and see who needs your attention as a
yes,
colleague, as an employee. And I love it. That's really needed and amazing.
thank you.
Sherry, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom with us. And I believe it will resonate and create more ripples in the coming future, all these new tools and ways of healing. So thank you very much.
Thank you again for having me.
Thank you. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. You're invited to subscribe to our podcast in order to know when we upload a new episode and follow us on social media. Thank you for listening. Until next time, take care and bye-bye.